That's not African.
The looting and the protesting.
Yes, there are some behaviors that are motivated by race.
If a white boy got killed by black police officers, I don't know about nobody else, but we rolling on them too.
All right, y'all, this is The Breakdown. It's your girl, Elmatic. Today, we are here with Tafori, Detroit activist, leader, and all things in between, and Chuck, our controversial
very
co-host here.
Very, very controversial.
How y'all doing, fellas?
Oh, I'm good, sister. How you doing, sister?
Blessed and highly favored. Thank you. Well, I mean, we having each other here. So my first question is, the height of everything that's going on right now, what are your thoughts on the death of George Floyd? I'm gonna start with Tafori here, cause he's the guest, Chuck.
Yeah, let him do
it's utterly reprehensible. It's unacceptable. It's connected to a legacy and history of policing, which is slave patrolling dressed up as so-called policing, where African people, especially African males, are perpetually terrorized and attacked by police officers, especially white police officers. And that's just emblematic of what has happened to African men throughout the years. What makes it so horrific is that the response, number one, it was how he did what he did. It was straight up callous, cold. It was utterly evil. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at the history of that particular police officer who was involved in at least 8 other incidences, several other murders and shootings, one wonders how in the hell was he even still on a department, you see, which then speaks to its internal structure and its institutional legacy. When you look at the fact that Amy Klobuchar was at that particular time prosecutor, and she was one of the ones who allowed him to still exist in that capacity in that particular police department. And they had the nerve to consider her for VP. So I have some serious issues with it.
VP for who? Let's throw that out there.
Yeah, for Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. So I have some serious issues with that. I mean, we had Breonna Taylor. We know what happened there. The no-knock warrant was just straight up assassination. Then you had the brother who was killed in Dallas last year. Then you had a sister down the road from there, I think in Arlington, that was killed in Texas shortly after. That was the sister who was in the house. And she was looking around her house, and the police officers just shot because they saw movement because they got a B&E call.
You name
right?
You name several black victims. Can you name any white ones?
Nah.
Why not?
Because I don't track white ones.
Why not?
Because I'm concerned about black people. That's my primary concern.
No. I can understand that being your primary concern, but you just framed the narrative. And first of all, I mean Africans. I don't know any Africans. You know any Africans?
Yeah, I know, brother. We see that completely different.
So, how many? I don't know any. I mean, you said police. I thought we were talking about the United States. You talking about Africa?
No, she was talking about the death of Brother Floyd, right?
Even with that being said, the policing for slaves still started here, though.
Yeah. But you talking the death of Brother Floyd, though, right?
Yes.
So I just want let's stay on task. Give me one second. So that was connected to that was connected to a bunch of other incidences, right?
Yes.
That has led us to the uprisings. To the uprisings we're dealing with throughout the country.
Time out. I'll let you go for a while. I'm gonna let you keep going.
Go ahead.
And I just want you to know, for you, my man, we've known each other for years. Whatever it is that I say throughout the duration of this,
man, it's all love.
Okay.
I know you're contradistinctive.
Okay. But, I don't like to stand on ceremony because I know what people who are of your particular point of view say about people like me when I'm not around. So
no, you don't.
We don't. Yes, I do. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes.
No, you ain't never heard me say that about you.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, yeah.
But, you just said something with respect to the legacy of the policing of, I don't know how you know about Africans and policing, but I get the point that you're trying to make. Right. That's the typical incendiary language that people who are of your particular persuasion like to use.
What is my persuasion?
You are a leftist, a raving.
What is a leftist?
Of course you don't. Of course you don't know it. Of course you don't know what a leftist is.
No, I'm asking you to define your terms.
What a leftist is, well, the term, you want me to just jump right into it now? You want to stay on the Floyd thing? Because I can give you the background as to where the dichotomy between left and right actually
I want to
began.
hear what Chuck has to say about the Floyd and then go into that.
Yeah, that's what I'm
interested into that.
No, I mean, as far as the Floyd thing is concerned, what I see, just like the furry pointed out, it's a tragic event, it was unfortunate. and we'll just let the legal system take its course. I mean,
That's it
all,
for you.
That's all I see. I don't see.
And they don't ever take their course though.
Say what?
They never give us justice when it comes to these situations.
I don't know about us.
How do you sleep
'cause
with?
There is no
that?
justice for me because I wasn't the one who was.
So how would you want us to
killed.
feel if it were you?
Well, I would want you to feel if it were me. I mean, you have to look at the
I'm
situation.
gonna feel like my brother, my nigga, if something that happened to him.
Yeah, you would take the situation for what it is, and ascertain exactly what happened, get all the facts, and you should want justice for me if I am indeed a victim in that situation. All this talk about Africa and all this other nonsense.
I want to talk about Africa. I said Africans.
I don't know where
I
any
refer
of
to
that
black
came
people as
from.
Africans.
I don't know where any of that came from as far as black people.
Where do you come
black
from?
Black people were not the victim in that instance.
No, a black man
Lloyd,
was.
exactly.
Yeah.
That particular individual was the victim in
I
that
agree.
instance.
So you don't feel like we
I
are
agree with that.
we are victims constantly.
No, we're not victims constantly. And if we are the victims constantly of any form of excessive policing, it is due not to the fact of some racial bias, because like I explained earlier, and he made a very good point when he talked about Amy Klobuchar. Here's what I find extremely peculiar. Because anytime instances like this occur, there's always we can get into sort of political perspective
Right,
and
'cause
she
she
start getting
considers
into
herself a
partisanship.
Democrat.
Exactly.
A
It's no quotes about it. That's what she is. And the modern day Democratic Party or the modern day Democrat Party has become a radical leftist party. Openly. I mean, they have always been leftist, but they've done a great deal to hide that fact from the people. But what I find extremely peculiar is that there never seems to be an sort of equal amount of outrage or this sense that folks want, accountability when it comes to liberal Democrats. That there's always this lie, and it is a damnable lie, that somehow racism belongs to conservatives and Republicans. But when you point out
I agree
the
with that.
blatant lie that is a person who is completely ignorant, what they do is they no longer see it as a political divide or an ideological divide. It turns into a racial issue because then it's about the system entirely. You see what I'm saying? But so, okay, well, the Republicans and Democrats ain't neither one of them shit for real, especially when you're talking about white folk. But it's funny because until that contradiction gets pointed out to somebody who doesn't know, they never seem to have the same energy reserved for liberal Democrats. And I find that a bit odd.
I agree.
Because the strangest thing about it is where these incidents occur primarily are in places that are ran by leftists. So it isn't about black, white. It's about ideas, because at the end of the day, we live in a world full of individuals, and we all have to figure out how in the world are we expected as human beings to live with one another and live in relative peace, harmony, and tranquility. And in that particular society that one can dream up in their mind, the question becomes, on what principle are those designs based? Period, point blank. Because the answer to those questions, when we have incidents like what happened to Mr. Lloyd, is always more leftism, more liberalism, these ideas, these concepts of social justice.
And that goes back to what I
Do
said
you
to you
believe in
last
social
week.
justice?
Absolutely not. There is no such thing.
Why it's not?
Because when you qualify justice, it's no longer justice. You tell me exactly what that means.
Let me ask you a question.
Was social-
What do you understand social justice to mean?
Social justice is just a modern day euphemism for class consciousness in the form of race consciousness. The same way,
What did you get that
way
from?
where you hear these, I'm telling you exactly, because I'm defining leftism as was defined by the ideological
So
fathers who put that nonsense
How do you
in the
define
atmosphere.
social justice?
Social justice is just, social is a euphemism for the collective. You understand what I'm saying? And so if there is going to be social justice, that means that there must be justice, quote unquote, for an amalgam of people who belong to a specific particular group, okay, whose guidelines or the parameters that confine that group are defined arbitrarily by, anyone who feels the need to do so, for example.
So that goes back to what I said to you before. And of course, you weren't here. This was last week, where I feel the conservatives or the Republicans have to be the ones that come to the forefront and say this has to stop.
Republicans do come to the forefront and say these things have to stop, but when Republicans offer solutions, it's always being misconstrued. Well, not so much. Well, it is being misconstrued of Republicans, for example, quote unquote, blaming the victim, because that is the paradigm of modern day liberalism. They went from progressives in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and now these very same liberals have created this false dichotomy because the original progressive ideology was one that was based upon racial/pseudo biological determinism. And when that particular belief system was deemed faulty, then all of a sudden, after World War II, which was the culmination of the eugenics movement, then things began to change, where the American liberal began to then blame abstractions like society, whatever the fuck that is, on why black folk can't so-called catch up to white people. And so it became either you blame society, which is the liberal position, to blame external factors for black pathology, and if you don't, then the same exact liberal American will throw you back into the old paradigm of where you're just simply being a racist, because if you do not accept societal factors for their downfall, then you are suggesting that they are inherently inferior. And no one is saying those things. But if you talk about the problem, which is the internal cultural dynamics, then you are somehow, once again, a racist, because you are saying that black culture is inferior. Because one of the things that the liberal academicians do is prop up this concept called cultural relativism, which is destroying Western civilization. It's destroying it.
Just to bring it back, I want to ask another question in regards to the Floyd. And this happens often. We've seen it with the riots of 67. We've seen it with the LA riots as well. What are your thoughts on the riots and the protesting?
Well, there are definitely, in this particular case, I would call them also uprisings as opposed to riots per se.
Explain that.
But I think there's a profound difference between these random, sporadic, I don't want to call them random because they're connected to a continuum of events.
To a feeling.
Yeah. And they're also connected to, it's a response, right, to an injustice that has occurred in multiple communities, right, that represent our people. Multiple communities of people who look like us.
Our people.
So it's, hold on, brother.
Okay,
hold on.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, you didn't say you didn't. I apologize.
I straight up listen to you. For 15 minutes, you ran off with a bunch of obfuscation and circumlocution, and I let you ramble. I let you just ramble on.
No. She specifically asked me, and like I say, you wanted to know exactly why we're in the paradigm that we're in. No. She specifically asked me a question. But go ahead, bro.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
Because see, this is why I'm profoundly different.
That's one of the things that they do. When you do stuff like that, they try to make it seem as though people like you. This is what he just did. You are exactly left. See, the thing about it is you're so ignorant that you don't even realize that's what you are. Okay, well, go ahead.
Are you trying to? How you gonna make me? You trying to make me upset?
No, I'm not trying to make you upset.
Man,
I'm not trying to make you upset.
I know you. I love you. You can't make me upset.
I'm not trying to make you upset.
I know you flex your intellectual muscle.
No, but that's what we're here to do.
You done read a few new books. You done came up on some new learning.
I've been doing this all my life. I've been doing this all my life.
So I get it.
But go ahead.
But I do this work for real.
Go ahead. Back
While
to
he
the
pontificates.
No.
I'm in the streets for real. I'm
Right.
organized.
Go ahead,
I put the work in for real.
Go ahead, Mr. Streets.
While he pontificates.
Go ahead,
right?
Mr. Streets.
What organization you belong to?
I don't need to be in it. That's the problem.
What have you as an individual ever done for black people?
Or
for young people?
First of all.
Or for any human being?
First of all, you're a little older than me. First of all, I'll take care of my family.
Great.
Which is all you're supposed to do.
And that's the most revolutionary thing a black man can do. I respect you for that.
And that's all you're supposed to do.
Congratulations on being married, man. You're a beautiful brother for that.
Man, thank you.
I admire that.
Activism ain't gonna get us nowhere. We've been doing that for decades. But go back.
You'd still be in chains. You'd still be a slave if it wasn't for activism.
No.
Yeah.
It depends on
if it wasn't for activism, you wouldn't even know what America. You wouldn't even know what America is. You wouldn't even know what America is. There would be no America if it wasn't for activism.
No, time out. No, is this the
time out?
Never mind, because
time out. That's a fact.
We'll get to your understanding.
Let me ask you a question. Was the Revolutionary War based upon activism?
Yes, it was.
I thought you said it wasn't no activism.
No.
No.
No, I'm talking about.
White folks can be activists, but black folks can't be activists.
No. I'm talking
Were they
about.
leftists?
I'm talking about.
I'm asking you a question. Were they leftists?
No,
What were
because,
they?
no, because there was no concept of leftism
What were they
versus
though?
rightism at
But
the time.
behaviors, but we can identify behaviors though.
No.
Were they behaviors leftist like? What you say? Were they leftish? That you say?
No.
You don't have no-
I'm
come on,
talking
man.
about no. Because
You trying
when
to do this with me for real?
because
You
when
forgot who I am?
bruh, time out. We gotta
trying to do this for me
we
for
gotta
real?
be constructive
Let me ask-
because
let me-
when
let me ask you a
I
question.
explain it,
Let me ask you this
you
question.
will
Let me ask you
accuse
this
me
question.
of
Let me-
this what you just did, going up and around the
No,
corner
let me ask
about
this
it
question.
because you
But
are the
you
one
said
who
there's
do
no
not
activism.
understand. No. I said activism.
Do you know what
From your
abolitionism
particular
is?
perspective is the problem.
Okay.
It's not about abolitionism
slavery
and
real?
fighting.
Was slavery real?
Fighting.
Was slavery real?
Yes, slavery was real. Slavery is still. There are more slaves in the world today than there ever have
Okay,
been in the past.
I'm talking about this. I'm talking about chattel slavery. I'm talking about the systematic enslavement of African people in the truest
bro.
sense.
I know.
Was it real? Yes or no? I'm
that's
asking you a
why-
question.
yeah,
Was
it's
it real? Yes or no?
Yes, it was real.
I got you. Now let me ask you a question. So the process by which our ancestors and let's go into your playfield. Let's use your playbook. Our ancestors, meaning great Americans,
Yeah.
our American ancestors who happen to be brown people, right? But they were great Americans, but they weren't quite American yet. Because there was no America yet, right? I'm saying, but soon to become Americans, right? The process by which they were liberated from was slavery bad?
Yeah, slavery.
Or are you like Jesse Lee Peterson? You think it was like a plane ride and coach? Is that what you believe?
No,
Do you believe that too?
yeah, slavery-
Okay, so
slavery is a bad thing.
slavery was bad, right?
Yeah, slavery was
Okay,
bad.
so was slavery done by
But that's
racists?
not what Jesse Lee
I'm asking you a
Peterson
question.
thinks, but go
Was
ahead.
slavery done by racists?
No, it was not.
What was it done by?
Slavery was done by opportunistic people looking to exploit the vulnerability of other human beings.
So
and
would
you
that
know
be
this,
capitalism?
and you know, no, it wasn't.
So
Slavery,
why did
slavery had nothing to do with
primarily
capitalism.
enslave just African people then?
The reason why they primarily enslaved African people is because African people were particularly in just their vulnerability and their and how.
Why were they vulnerable?
Why were they vulnerable? I mean, first of all, I'm not going
What do you mean when you say vulnerability?
I'm not going to preempt you.
What do you mean when you say vulnerability?
Vulnerability. I mean, if you look at the entire legacy of slavery as an institution, going back millennia,
Sure.
slavery has never been a race-based institution. Never.
So let me ask you
Never.
a question. So racism is a social construct. Would you agree? Is there such thing as racism? Does it exist?
Racism is something that a person thinks internally.
So
it's something
there
that-
are no behaviors associated with racism.
Absolutely.
Well, it depends upon what motivates a person's behavior. But how do you know what motivates a person's behavior?
I asked you a simple question.
Yeah, you did.
Are there behaviors associated with racism?
Bro, if a white guy got up and punched me in the
You
face,
can't answer the question.
listen to what I'm saying. No.
I hear what you're saying. Well, I hear what you're saying, but
Yes, there are
Okay, thank you, brother.
specific
That's all I'm
behaviors
saying,
that are
baby.
motivated
I'm
by
just trying to understand
racism. But what I'm saying is, it is of no consequence what motivates a person to violate your private property rights. Period. Point blank. We live in a free society where people are free to think and believe whatever the hell
I
it is
agree.
that they
I
want to
agree.
believe.
I agree.
But
I agree.
it is equal protection under the law
It's supposed to
as a
be.
human being that makes you a free man.
It's supposed
Period.
to
Point
be.
blank. Now, what a white person thinks about you as a black person is of no consequence. None whatsoever.
Yeah, it's not about what you think, it's about what you do.
Exactly.
You can't legislate thoughts.
Exactly.
I don't give a damn about what you
Exactly.
think. I care about what you do to me. though.
Exactly.
So we're on the same page.
Exactly.
So you did all that talking just to be on the same page with me?
No, because we just covered.
You
we
did
just
all
co-
that
no,
talking just to agree with
no,
me?
No, I don't agree with you. Because we talked about a lot of different things, but we can
But
talk
man.
about some things when we're talking about certain episodes in history.
I got you.
Okay,
I got
but
you.
you just talked about.
Was
slavery.
Was it activism, beloved? Was it activism that contributed to the liberation of African people?
Yes, it was, but I'm not
Yes, it
talking
was?
about. I'm not talking about activism. Just simply
You just
on the
said there was
basis
no
of
activism.
activism.
You just contradicted
So
yourself.
do
I
you
never
think-
said that.
Let me
just said-
interject. Let me interject.
Go ahead.
You just said there was no activism. There's no such
Do
thing.
you think that the quote unquote activism that is happening now?
That's what I'm talking about, but he
looting and
keeps filibustering.
That's
not activism.
the looting and the protesting
Yeah.
that is happening today. Because personally, I think that it's not effective.
It's not effective
It's not
at all.
effective because we've seen
not at all.
protesting happen since the beginning of time. It does not work. There is something else that we have to do in order to get through to these people. And I don't think there's anything to get through to them. They're going to do what they want to do.
So I think, if I may, I think we may agree here, Brother Chuck, if I may. I agree. I think that, and that's why we wrestle with terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some say riots, some say uprisings, some say rebellions, right? I firmly believe that rebellion, when you talk about rebellion or revolution, is not just a random emotional response to injustice,
No.
right, or oppression,
No.
right? I'm saying I think that there are organized, concerted efforts to do certain things.
But we know that
is
now
that what
there
this
aren't
is?
any
Hold on,
organized groups.
Hold on, no, but
Is that
that's
what this
not-
was?
Hold on,
Is that what that
hold on.
was?
That's
And
not
not at all.
That's not true. Yesterday, it was organized. That's why you saw hits in multiple cities. Black Lives Matter leaders throughout. I don't know them personally.
Do you think they're effective?
Yeah, I think they're effective to an extent.
To do-
Hold on,
to-
but
to
let me
do what?
finish.
What are
Let
they
me finish.
doing?
Let me finish my point, though.
Okay, go
I'm gonna
ahead.
tell you why I think they're effective, especially in regards to this current situation, which is not necessarily just Black Lives Matter. I think that the rebellion or the uprising in Minneapolis was
an
effective to the extent that the person finally got charged. He should have been charged and arrested.
Absolutely.
But hold on. The reason why we don't have that in Detroit, and we've had incidences similar to that, is because what we've had different in Detroit is because activists are on the ground and they have relationships with people in positions to make certain decisions, right, relative to Black life, that prevent that from happening. I mean, when I say prevent, I mean delayed. What I'm referring to is delayed justice, right? In the city, when a brother or sister gets killed unjustifiably, the person gets arrested for probable cause immediately. Kim Worthy is notorious for prosecuting and convicting corrupt police officers. We do it regularly in Detroit, unlike in other places, right? When there's a unjustified shooting in Detroit, we respond immediately as a city as far as
That's what
political
Chief Craig
leadership.
said. He said that would have been taken care of.
Immediately. Now, the issue with Minneapolis and a lot of these other places, they don't have the kind of activists, right? They don't have the kind of relationships with people in power that we do in the city of Detroit. We got bona fide activists in Detroit, trained, skilled, bona fide activists who have relationships with people in power, right? And this is the reason why we get a response from police chiefs and mayors and governors and county executives and prosecutors, not in all cases, but in most cases when an injustice occurs. That's what makes us uniquely different. And see, we already went down this path,
right.
the 68 Rebellion, right? We've seen it. Out of the 68 Rebellion, this is what makes it effective.
Come on, man.
This is what makes it effective, right? Because I just heard you for 30 minutes. This is what makes
you
it effective,
didn't. No, you
right?
didn't.
This is what makes it effective. Out of the 68 Rebellion, we got a police commission, which is a community
68
oversight
Rebellion,
body to monitor the behavior of police. Out of the rebellion, you later have consent decrees, which are standards imposed upon police departments who have a history of unjust, illegal behavior. It forces a level of compliance, right? I'm saying, so all of that comes out of resistance. All of that comes out of our resistance here in the city of Detroit. You have in the city of Detroit, you got a Black mayor. 3 out of the 4 of the ACs are Black folks, right? All the deputy chiefs are Black folks, right?
What has Detroit looked like over the last
but
few
hold on, brother.
decades,
Hold on,
man?
brother.
What the hell has every major American city looked like since 1968?
Hold on, watch this. And
I'm curious.
right?
Because the riots did
I'm
us
curious.
awful. It took us 50
I'm with
years
that.
to try to
I'm
get
with that.
there.
We
So
have-
that's what they didn't learn from.
We
We're
haven't
not
gotten
getting it.
there.
We're still
No.
we
You
still,
ain't
no.
getting it. You ain't getting
We
it.
still have systemic and
What does that mean?
hold on. We still have systemic
What does that mean?
and structural change.
What does that mean?
That took place as a
What
result
does
of the
that
rebellions.
mean?
That's a fact.
What does
This
that
is- This is
mean?
when you get Coleman Young. Don't try to use.
Coleman Young
don't
was
try
a
to use my
disaster.
tactic.
Right.
Coleman
King
Young was a
Young was the
disaster.
worst thing that could have happened
He
to
was
us.
a
No, it's not. No, he
disaster.
wasn't.
Because what you don't
No, he wasn't.
understand
Prove it.
is in.
Why was he a disaster?
He was a disaster.
Where's your data?
Look at
Where's your data?
I'm gonna come back up to the Coleman Young issue, but I want to back up to some of the questions that he asked about our founding and the revolution, these things, and so on and so forth. When he talked about activism. Activism in and of itself doesn't necessarily describe anything as it pertains to the American Revolution. Things have to be placed into their proper context, because if you look at the American Revolution and you juxtapose the American Revolution with the French Revolution that took place right around the same time, those two revolutions were based on two different principles. The French Revolution was based upon what they deemed to be their I wouldn't necessarily call it a holy trinity, because one of the things that the French revolutionaries were trying to do was trying to undermine the authority of the church. It was fraternité, liberté, and égalité. Liberty, fraternity, brotherhood, and equality. This is what led to the reign of terror in France that lasted for 10 years, that was ran by a French dictator by the name of Robespierre. And I talked about him a little bit on the last show, but I really didn't really get into it. But if you want to know someone who was looked upon within the annals of history as being one of history's biggest villains and biggest tyrants, look no further than Robespierre. Robespierre, his revolution was not the American Revolution. So when he's talking about activism, okay, yes, there is, activism in and of itself is not a bad thing, but it's the type of activism that is the issue. The problem here is, and the reason why the so-called black community is in the state that it is in, is because of the political ideology that is being promulgated by the so-called modern day black leader and activists. They are destroying the very same people that they claim that they want to help. So bringing back forward to Coleman Young, like you say, talking about the uprisings in the 1960s, Coleman Young was a disaster, just like every other liberal, many of them black politicians who came to prominence post 1968, destroyed these beautiful, prosperous American cities. And one of the main things, and it was partly due to their action, but also due to the fact that when you live in a society like ours that's based upon freedom of association and freedom of movement, what do you think is going to happen to places like Minneapolis, Minnesota from here on forward? The whatever human capital and intellectual capital that exists in that community will be gone. Not just the infrastructure that has been destroyed, it's the people with the skills and the ability to build the wealth, to make the community what it should be. Same exact thing happened in the 1960s. The flight of human capital was disastrous because people, whether they be white, black, blue, brown, or purple, do not want to live around crime and violence and drugs and broken families and young men running the streets with no fathers, no guidance, and no self-control. Period, point blank.
Speaking of capitalism, is that good or bad?
Capitalism is the most humane economic system on the face of the planet. It's the only economic system that exists on the face of the planet. Period, point blank. Everything else is just politics dressed up as economics. Mm-hmm. There's only two ways to skin that cat. You either have markets or you have command and control. That's it.
I agree with this point about capitalism. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the only issue is it's not capitalism. The issue is how do we manage and how do we deal with capitalism? Right. So how is capitalism executed? Mm-hmm. So the key to capitalism is entry, being granted equitable entry to the marketplace. That's the key to it.
Do you think there's a disconnect in the black community when it comes to that?
I mean, the whole object is to eliminate and remove barriers to entry. So the challenge for capitalism for a lot of African people, or for a lot of people of color in this country, and even sisters in some regards, is that black folks don't necessarily have the same access to the marketplace as some other people. Mm-hmm. That's the challenge. That's the challenge around capitalism. But capitalism as a system itself, I don't think capitalism as a system itself is inherently flawed when it's practiced and exercised properly. See, so I'm cool like where he coming from. I get that. I know what this is. So this is like entertainment to me.
You know what it is.
Because okay. I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you what makes me not really give a lot of value, right, to what you say, because you don't practice it. You don't do no work.
What? I don't practice. I'm not. I just told you.
I hear all the pontificating all the time,
bro.
Like you're real big on intellectual masturbation. I get it.
Listen, bro. No.
I don't care about none of this. I care about black children dying in the streets of Detroit.
No,
I care about black children. Hold on. Mm-hmm. I care about black men getting murdered.
Got you.
By police departments that are rank and full of white supremacists.
Hold
on. Based upon the 2000. See, didn't this man set rules? You can't control yourself.
I'm not.
You have no self-control. You have no discipline.
I'm picking
That's
with
a part of your problem.
But people can still hear you. I'm not talking over you.
Can I ask a question?
You're talking over me right now, Chuck.
My question in regards to that, and I agree with everything you're saying.
I wanted to finish that one point.
Go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead.
Because I want to hear it.
You're right.
I'll stop completely.
I want to hear it.
I'm saying, so in 2006, the FBI put out a bulletin and circulated it to police departments throughout the country, especially urban police departments. The 2006 bulletin stated that they had intelligence that revealed to them that white supremacist organizations and individuals who practice the tenets of white supremacy or white racism or whatever you want to call it, right, have infiltrated police departments throughout the country. We see evidence of that because in at least 4 of the most recent shootings over the last 2 years, the white officers who were shooters had relationships, right, or association with white supremacist organizations. In fact, that sign, that cross that's regularly worn by white supremacist organizations or white racist organizations, it was on the arm of the gentleman, of the father of the guy who shot Brother Ahmaud Arbery. You see what I'm saying? I'm saying, so my concern is, have we properly vetted police departments, especially urban police departments, throughout the country to ensure that they don't have white racists in their police departments? And we see by the evidence, which is black men being shot by white folks who have associations with white racist organizations, right? That's evidence that that's a reality. And we have not properly addressed that.
You know what else we haven't addressed properly either? Is black on black crime.
I was just getting ready to say something about that. I don't want to, because
I agree.
We can talk about that.
Whatever black on black crime. There's no black on black crime. People kill where they live.
No, here's the thing though.
I
know, but black folk do more killing where they live.
We have to have the same energy when it comes to Ray killing Day for a dime bag of weed.
You don't know who I am, do you?
No, I don't, and I apologize. So I've had to do more research, and I've heard great things. But I think that not just for you, this isn't a conversation just for you. This is as a whole, because this is for the masses, right? That this energy has to be the same in relation to anytime you see your boy getting killed over a pair of buffs, the young man was killed last year who worked hard worked 2 jobs to make sure he bought him a pair of glasses that he liked, that he worked hard for. My cousin was shot on his way to Chrysler, who got jacked for his Charger, and now his arm isn't mobile anymore. A good thing that he worked hard for. Just because you're jealous, however you feel, those things aren't talked about. We're not being activists and protesting against those things. We are looting about those things. So we have to also understand that within our communities, the violence is far more important. Yeah. I'm not going to say far more important.
No, it is. It's far more important.
No, it's not. You can do both.
You can do both, but we have
They're not mutually exclusive events.
They're not. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. But
I treat them the same.
I understand.
Terror is terror.
Death is death. I believe you on that.
And guess what? If a white boy got killed by a black police officer, I don't know about nobody else, but we rolling on them too.
Oh, really?
For sure.
But
we've done it.
But then,
hey, we've done it though.
I know you've done it, but when I asked you, give me some examples.
I ain't talking about what I think or how I feel and what I know. I'm talking about what I do.
No.
That's what makes me different than these other cats who sit in this seat.
I asked you.
I'm bona fide.
I asked
Check
you.
my record. Google
thoroughbred.
No. But you said you said that you didn't care about the whites who are killed by police officers. You said it yourself.
I don't though.
You couldn't.
I only care about the black men being killed by police and black men killing each other.
I'm concerned about black folks getting killed.
I mean, well,
they're not a priority for me.
Time out. Primarily, I mean, could you at least name one? Because,
it's not a regular occurrence in Detroit.
It's not a regular occurrence in Detroit.
No, it's not a regular occurrence in Detroit. Well, hold on. Name one white guy. Brother Chuck, I'm asking you a question, brother. And this is a sincere question. This is not no question to try to jam you up, honestly. Because I feel you. And I think there's a lot of legitimacy to your point. What I'm saying is, can we name, let me pose it to us as a family right here. I can't even name the last white brother that was shot by a police officer in Detroit, much less a black one. Now, this is important to understand about Detroit. This is why I tell people, we got to quit. This is my issue with the demonstrations happening in Detroit. I got an issue with it. See, me and you probably share the same critique. Because that don't apply to Detroit. Detroit is the only city in this country where you actually have more police officers who've been killed than unarmed black men.
Right. Yeah.
That's unheard of.
I mean,
and guess what? And we marched, demonstrated, did visuals for every one of those officers who've been killed.
Yep.
Because I value life, especially black life in my city.
Yeah, and because the majority of officers that work in areas that are densely populated by blacks are black people themselves, because these officers come from these very same communities. As a matter of fact,
they should.
Actually, they don't. There's no residency
laws.
Not
anymore.
70% of officers live outside the city of Detroit.
But in terms of violent,
and that's where we lose community.
In terms of violent interactions between police officers and civilians, That's according to the University of Maryland study that backed up the study that was put together by Roland Fryer, a Harvard economist, that the majority of blacks who have violent confrontations with police officers these things disproportionately occur with black officers. The issue I have with this,
I agree.
The issue I have with, in terms of we talking about these various institutions, black life is so rich and diverse, and we prosper in so many various sectors.
It's fear
of the, and so this issue we talked about this last time. We live in an imperfect world full of imperfect people. Human beings are human beings. I just find it so odd that we have so many blacks in powerful positions all throughout our society in various areas of life, but yet and still, anytime when we visually see a white person doing something to a black person, we automatically jump to this concept of racism as though what motivated that person's actions is of any importance to what actually took place. Because you got black politicians, you got black mayors, black officers, black city council members, black police chiefs and what have you.
Don't do shit for us.
Exactly. So this issue, this dichotomy, this whole black white junk is so played out.
Why do you think that we're not valued?
The shit needs to stop. Well, but value by whom? We by each other, because we talked about these racist white supremacists, these organizations.
Because,
like the old adage says. For crying out loud. The KKK couldn't have dreamt of anything better to destroy black life than the welfare system.
Absolutely.
So how in the fuck can we sit up here and bitch, moan, and complain when 7,000 black people are killed every year, homicided every year, and that's approximately 1,000 more deaths than were caused by the Klan in all of the history of recorded lynchings here in the United States? We beat that in 1 year.
I think all the time you teach people how to treat you.
Yeah,
we do that shit in one year. Let me go back to this issue of capitalism.
Do you support welfare?
Absolutely not.
You know there are more white people on welfare than black people, right?
I don't support.
That's fine.
It's not about race.
But you brought up black people.
It's not about race.
Why did you make it about race?
The reason why I made it about race is because of there is more political dexterity amongst whites, because many of them don't buy into the big government, punitive taxation, a mandatory minimum wage, big government, social engineering, welfare type systems, the FDR program, the Lyndon B. Johnson program. There is more political and intellectual diversity amongst whites. That's the problem. And the reason why the welfare system...
what was FDR's program called?
FDR was called the New Deal.
Okay,
now hold on.
You know, white people's benefited from that more so than black people.
I know, and
because black people protested against the New Deal, because black folks didn't benefit from it, because most of the black folks in that particular time worked in the service industry, and they didn't qualify for the benefits. You realize that, right?
No.
Did you know that?
No. The reason
you got to study what you're talking about, man.
Capitalism is the only economic system that is commensurate with constitutionalism, because capitalism is, of course, a term that was given to the free market system by Karl Marx, but it was never called capital until he gave it that particular, designation. But capitalism, or the free market system, is simply people freely associating with one another for their own benefit. He talked about access, having access to the market. What gives you access to the market is your birth, because capitalism as a system is based upon what you have between your two ears. Kaput, capital, the skull. If you are born and you are allowed to pursue your own interests, then you have effectively entered the system upon your birth. It's not about having access to this. No one gives you access. You have access as a human being because you're born with the right
to... You really believe that?
Yes, because you are born with the right to accumulate property. You have that inherent right upon your birth. So when you talk about access to the system...
So you have the same opportunities as a white man?
Absolutely.
Okay, keep believing
Absolutely.
I agree with Brother Chuck theoretically. That's what capitalism is supposed to be. So it's like with any other concept, right? Theoretically, something may be sound as far as its inherent structure. But the issue in this country, though, oftentimes is the application of it. So let me just share some things with you, Brother Chuck. So our folk, when we came here, right, when we came to Detroit, black folks could not get a mortgage.
Right.
That's fact. For like 40 years. And
Absolutely.
in fact, black folks, because on my deed
the
currently,
first mortgage started on 8 Mile.
look, because my deed currently, it still has restrictive covenant language on it. Whites only. It's on my deed. And more importantly, black folks, as far as, like he said, we are born into equal access to the marketplace, right? Black folks in this city, right, could not become realtors. They were called realtors. They couldn't get a real estate license. So if with the, I mean, so
Now,
that, hold on.
I just want to ask you a question. I'm not cutting you. I just want to ask you a question
sir.
about that. And what inhibited them from getting real estate? Like what? Who?
Laws.
Laws.
The law.
Okay, got you.
Right, I'm saying the law. So, but that's my point though, right? I'm saying that that's why you got to have activists to challenge the inaccurate or unfair application of the law. Dr. King called it the misappropriation of the law, right? That's why you have to have activism. And because we had black activists who fought that law, that state law, right? And also the HUD, also the housing department, right? It was a law there as well. It was a federal and state law, and municipalities practice those same racist practices, right? Okay. And hold on, we had to fight for the right, one, to even become realtors, to sell property, and we also had to fight for the right to get mortgages because we were on land contract.
Yep.
For years. And even to this day, many black folks are still on land contract because they can't qualify themselves to get loans. That's a fact.
Hold on, wait, they can't. Why can't they qualify?
Oh, I'm not blaming the system for that. I'm saying it may be because of some decisions they made. I don't know. Okay. Right. I'm just saying poor, like impoverished people.
Okay.
You know, that's what I'm saying. I'm not blaming the system for that, Chuck. That ain't what I'm saying.
Okay. Because, I'm glad you said that because capitalism has nothing at all to do with government. And this is one of the things that when we talk about the philosophical divide, here's one of the things that we constitutionalists and conservatives, this is what we stand for. This is what we believe in. First of all, let me just take a quick tangent real quick. People call me a right winger. I'm not a right winger. You know, so that's a
you're a free thinker.
That's a slur.
Yeah, I don't believe in that.
That the left uses to because they know that sets off an emotional trigger.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? I represent the Constitution and the founding. The founding of this country is not right wing, but it can't be. You know what I'm saying? The founding is not right wing. I'm technically the middle. And one of the things that we talk about, and I just said it, I said freedom of association. Okay? You cannot have capitalism if you go all the way back to Adam Smith without freedom of association. Walter E. Williams teaches that the purpose of the law is to stop a person. And this, I give credence. Right. You know, I cite my sources. I ain't the brightest man in the world. I'm just smart enough to listen to smart people.
You're very smart.
Walter E. Williams was a brilliant man. And he talked about the reason why you have laws because it's safe to assume that without the law, people would do the opposite of what the law states, or else there would be no purpose for the law. You talked about the government getting involved in determining who gets what. People can't have realtors. People can't do this and people can't do that. The problem, and I don't know if the furry fits in that particular mold, but this goes back to my criticism of the modern day activist, because the modern day activist is looking upon third party entities, whether it be state, federal, or local government, to correct the ledger of perceived past injustice. And that isn't going to get you what you want, because all you're doing is taking property from someone and giving it to someone else. I don't believe that the government should be involved in any way, shape, form, or fashion in controlling the market. If you have too much, not to say some government regulations aren't necessary or a good thing, but when you have too much government regulation, therein lies the problem. You don't get the free flow of commerce when government is involved. And this is why our American cities have been destroyed, because there has been too much activism in the ranks of quote unquote activism, as I see it, in the ranks of our politics. So there's too much wealth and income redistribution, and the producers flee from these areas because they do not want their property confiscated.
What is the correlation between that and the most recent events, capitalism? What you're saying?
There is the correlation between the two, okay, is that there are a multitude of negative consequences involved when there's government overreach in the lives of the citizenry, okay? Now, as far as what happened in that particular incident, I don't know. We're hearing new reports coming out every day. They may have known each other. They may have worked together. There may have been some past things of that nature between the two of them. Some suggesting that maybe Lloyd was intoxicated on some kind of drug. I don't know. We now reading the medical reports. No clear signs of asphyxiation, but it's maybe likely that what actually, what occurred may have been, responsible for his killing, but the medical examiner couldn't exactly say. Whatever. We don't know. We find out new things every day. But as far as, capitalism as a whole, and as it relates to what is, central planning, that leads to the breakdown of the civil society.
No pun intended.
Right. Yeah. It leads to the breakdown of the civil society. Because when you have government involvement, because what sustains, and I'm assuming would agree with this, what sustains the community and what is the foundation and the building block is the nuclear family. And when the family is destroyed, everything else that grows from that poisonous seed, it's fruit of the poisonous tree.
Amen.
So therein lies the problem.
So you don't. But let me ask you, Brother Chuck. So if I, because I'm big on active listening. So if I understand you properly, you do believe in some form of regulation, but not overreach, not excessive regulation.
Right, not excessive. I'm more so libertarian when it comes to it. And as a matter of fact, speaking, and you might have some history on this. Like for example, a lot of people, they look at the black community today, and they always want to try to make some erroneous connection between slavery and what happens today. But a lot of people, not saying you, because I haven't even heard your opinion on this yet, but a lot of people, when they talk about now and slavery, they leave out, 1860 to about 1920, 1930. I mean, prior to the enactment of the Davis-Bacon Act in 1931, the unemployment rate amongst blacks was lower nationwide than that of whites nationwide. The reason being, if you understand markets, is because if they may have been, say, for example, if there is some racism, for example, right? If I as an employer, say I'm white, if I have some ill feelings towards a black person, okay, well, so what? But guess what? When it's my shit, because I ain't playing around with nobody else stuff. Now this is mine. I have to turn over a profit, because guess what? Me and my competitor, we may both be white, but if he outcompete me, he gonna put me out of business. So I got to capitalize, no pun, I have to capitalize on the opportunity to generate revenue. Right. And how do you generate revenue? Well, one of the ways to generate revenue is to cut labor costs. And how do you cut labor costs? Well, you can either decrease your workforce, or you can find people you can get the same amount of productivity out of, but who will work for less. Black folk were willing to work for less money than whites. And then what came out as a result of that? What came out as a result of that was collective bargaining. And this is why, to this very day, you have this incestuous relationship between public and private sector unions and the Democrat Party, because the government is involved in the market by arbitrarily setting labor prices. And what that did was it priced a lot of young black workers out of the business. It priced their labor out of competition, because the government said, listen, if you want, you can't, like I said, you're telling me as government, cut me off whenever you want to, because I feel like I've been going. I'm not disagreeing with most of what you're saying. I agree with most of what you're saying. So what I'm saying is today, that is a modern day, quote unquote, progressive point of view, is the mandatory minimum wage, which has destroyed the black unemployment prospects for a lot of young blacks in this country, because the economic, the rung, the first tier, so to speak, on the economic ladder, they cannot reach, because what the government tells you as a private citizen that you have to do with your property, or else it's against the law. Once again, we're talking about government involvement in the market. The government can't get between two private citizens and tell them what they can and cannot do. If I want to work for 50 cents a day, that's my business. That's my fucking prerogative. The government can't come in and say, you got to pay him more than that 50 cents. Well, nigga, that's all I want. Right. You understand what I'm saying? So if you as a business owner, it's your capital, it's your property. Capital, that's all it is, your property. Capital, you use it to invest in yourself so you can generate more capital. Your car can be a form of capital. If you want to go become a fucking Uber driver, that's the definition. And so you're gonna say to yourself, I'm not gonna pay this motherfucker $15 an hour because his labor is not worth that much money.
Right. So I think when you have these kinds of dialogues and discourses where people get lost, or especially those who are considered to be on the right, conservatives, they miss the fact that they are and this is what I was trying to say before in regards to access to the marketplace. They miss the fact that there are at times barriers to entry, which means there are impediments legally put in place to prevent certain groups of people from gaining access to the market. Like I mentioned, I'd use that as one example, Brother Chuck. Black folks couldn't become realtors, right? They were reduced to being a realtors, which means they couldn't get a real estate license, right? And they definitely couldn't become mortgage brokers, right? So that prevents them, if they choose to embrace that profession, right, or become a real estate investor, or become a real estate specialist, or become a mortgage broker. If they choose to get into that field, there are impediments put in place by the law, right, that prevents them from gaining access. Same thing with people who wanted to buy a home, right, 30, 40 years ago. If they wanted to buy a home, they could not get a mortgage. It was illegal. So even now, let's bring it up to right now. So the issue or the challenge.
Can you cite that law?
Let me finish one second.
I got a real estate book in my car.
Can you cite it for me? Okay.
No, I can't cite the law to you right now.
I ain't saying you lying. I just want to know.
No,
I can give
look
it
it up.
to you.
Let's look it up. Let's look it up. It's not hard to find. Let's look it up. I'm saying, so the issue right now is black people, right, getting access to capital, say via bank loans. So we know for a fact, NAACP did a study on Bank of America, for instance, a few years ago, right, that proved that black folk, right, weren't allowed. Black folks with the same qualifications as white folks weren't able to access the kinds of loans that European Americans are able to access, especially black business people. One of the things that Coleman Young did do is that he allowed black general contractors, right? He allowed black general contractors to get access to some of the contracts that the white general contractors were able to get access to.
Well, Kwame trying to do with Bobby Ferguson.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what he tried to do. Exactly. Yeah. Good point. And I'm talking about Jim Jenkins and them.
I'm
talking about Jim Jenkins and it absolutely was illegal. I'm talking about Jim Jenkins though.
I don't mind breaking the law.
Yeah. So back then,
all for breaking the law.
Yeah. So in the 70s and 80s, when Coleman first came on the scene, when he was first elected as mayor, right, that's one of the first things he wanted to do. He wanted to give access to black general contractors, because before then, all they could do is sign up as subcontractors under white general contractors, because they couldn't get access to the capital because the banks wouldn't give them loans, right? They couldn't get access to certain materials because stores and businesses wouldn't sell it to them, right? Because those things were only provided for white general contractors. Subcontractors at the time couldn't even access some of those materials because they didn't have enough collateral capital.
This is still the law? This is still the law?
No, brother, not now. No. We're just talking about theoretically, especially the application of capitalism. It's not that it's wrong in theory and in principle. The problem with capitalism is the practice and execution of it. So I'm with you. If all things considered are equal, that the only person individual could blame for not being successful is his or herself. All things are equal. I'm with that. I'm one of them kind. I'm a different kind of progressive independent.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm with you 100%.
Okay. Well, I mean, you might want to, because the term progressive is so it's been dragged through the mud.
That's why I say I'm a different kind of progressive.
But let me.
I'm nuanced.
Hold on. But I want to talk about this issue, and I do definitely want to get into the history of this notion of progressivism, because it really plays into all this talk we hear today about white supremacy and Nazis and so on and so forth. But to your point, when I want to make a point when he's talking about mortgages and things of that nature, and just,
but I don't think I made my. But I don't think I made. You just brought something to me because I didn't completely answer the question. Right. This is very brief. So what I'm saying is that government in situations like that, they serve as the instrument to provide access. They're not an impediment, right? They are there to remove impediments so we can equally compete for access to the marketplace. That is when government. That's when government is functioning properly.
That's what
government
is supposed to do now.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the functions of government are outlined in the articles of the Constitution, but without time to get deeply into
Discrimination is illegal, correct? Is discrimination legal?
Yeah,
Is discrimination illegal? Yes or no?
It's very time out. It's various statutes against it. But it's not illegal.
There are certain clauses in government that have been put in place. Certain discrimination practices have been deemed illegal. Discrimination is simply I don't want you in here.
Exactly.
I own the
But
store.
you know what I'm saying, right? That's what I mean.
But that's
the problem.
important because
Are
that ain't
discriminatory to the point?
You know what I'm saying?
Go ahead.
Are discriminatory practices, especially in state ran or state supported, right? Or state approved businesses, where businesses get their licenses from the state or from any municipality.
If there's any sort of subsidies,
right?
yes.
Right, especially the federal government.
Yes. It should be because it's public.
Are they responsible to ensure there is no discriminatory practices in the execution of those functions? Yes or no?
Well, they're public institutions, but there are a lot of difficulties in terms of how those particular things are implemented. Because what tends to happen is people misuse the mechanisms of government, because that's the function of government, is not to use, government to exact revenge against your political opponents. It doesn't work that way, because you may or may not always have control of the system. And think about it this way: you may be black, but guess what? There are people who are black, non-black, and so on and so forth, who look upon you, whatever little bit of, who knows, maybe they're jealous of your height, maybe they're jealous of the type of car you drive, and so on and so forth. And then guess what? That same angry mob that was chanting for racial justice one day gonna come after you, because those people don't have any principles. You think for 1 second, you think that you're all here and together, but you're not. But let me explain. Because I want to piggyback off what he said about mortgages and so on. So this issue about discrimination in the private sector. We live in if you live in a free society, this is why. And I'm about to get a little bit deep, because I'm gonna talk about some underlying principles here. This is why James Madison, George Washington, they all talked about how our republic was created to be used by a people who were moral. And those people not only had to be moral, but they had to be religious. Our system was created for a moral and religious people. God gave you free will. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because heaven has to be a reward. I can't coerce you into doing anything, even if it is for your own good, because I would rather make you a free man than to make you a slave. So what I'm saying is that when you live in a system like Western civilization, particularly America, that's founded by Judeo-Christian values, you have to give in your law and in your politics your fellow citizens the free will to do, because in order for this notion of racism to some way somehow be eradicated, it's not on a third party entity like government to play referee. It's on the citizenry to work out the social issues on their own, and that is about the virtue of the people. And you have to give, whether they be white, black, green, or whatever. No, I'm just saying, however whatever, if you want to, call it activism or not, whatever, avenues you want to utilize to try and, bring this about. But when you start talking about, well, what can they on high do for me? All you're going to do is cause more resentment and more instability amongst the people, because people have to have the free will to come into what we, within our modern moral paradigm, deem to be upright and good. Period, point blank. You cannot legislate discrimination and racism out of a society, because if I own something, no matter what I think about you, if I hate you because of the color of your skin, what I own belongs to me. So you tell me, if I'm gonna do business with you, if I'm gonna loan you money on interest, why in the hell should I do business with you? Make it worth my while. Oh, say, well, I don't like black people. Well, guess what? According to capitalism, when you understand markets, if black people are denied because there's systemic racism going on amongst all of the lenders in the country, even though they're big, broad, multifaceted, we don't know who these people are. We don't know how many black folk even sit on the board in the boardroom at Bank of America. We don't even know. But let's say, for example, if there's a market for black mortgages, you have to have faith, just like God has faith in you. You have to have faith that somebody is going to fill that void in the market and consolidate all of those people who are in demand for that particular service. When there's a demand for a service, this is the principle of capitalism. When there's a demand for a service, capitalism dictates that someone will step in and fill that demand. Discriminate against black people all you want to, but the market will take care of it. You have to believe that, because there's either one or two ways you can handle it. You can say, let a free person fill the void, or you can use the mechanisms of government to compel people to do what you want them to do. And the question then becomes, is that a better way to govern a society? And I'd say, dare I say, it is not. I would much rather have discrimination in a society, but we are free to do as we please, because one day somebody is going to tell you that what you think is bigoted, that what you think is racist, and that what you think is wrong. So you have to give people that freedom, no matter what you think about them. Period. Point blank.
I don't have an issue with
I can have the faith all I want.
Yeah,
but,
I don't have issue with swimming in the quagmire of idealism. I get it.
Yeah.
I get, Brother Chuck, that this is what it should be or what it could be. But I'm a relative objectivist, right? So I have to deal with what it is.
It'd be a realist.
Because I have to deal with what it is. So I'm saying, so if you feel differently, then I would encourage you to become an activist and get the laws changed. I feel you. I'm saying, but based upon what we have to currently work with, right? Federally sanctioned banking systems have parameters and laws that they have to operate by. That's just a fact. It is what it is. Let's not talk about what it should be, what's most effective. We can only measure what it is. If you can't measure it, it don't matter.
But Tafari, though, pause for a second. I don't really think you quite understand, because it is in fact government intervention that leads to a lot of financial crises, because the private capital market knows best how to deal with that particular industry than bureaucrats and elected officials.
So speaking,
I don't have the capital, because capital is in your mind. I don't have the skills to run a bank. That doesn't mean that I can't learn, but I'm not ready to be the CEO of a bank to determine who should I lend money to and who shouldn't I lend money to. When government tries to implement, and this is the funniest thing that I have about frustrated, angry black folk.
So I'm not talking about faith.
Who do not realize that the things that they have been talking, the things that they talk about now, are the things that government, particularly left-wing politicians, have been doing the very same things that they have been clamoring for, or they've been doing things in the name of these perspectives for so long. And the frustration comes when you see riots exploding in the street, is because they are not getting out of the deal what they thought they were going to get, because these elected officials and bureaucrats do not know how to properly run a society. They're theoreticians, and everything is based upon abstractions. They have no idea.
I can agree with
If you start telling people, I guarantee you, if you say, this is what happens, they look at a situation and they see an asymmetrical distribution in outcome-based statistics. So they say, barely black folk, we barely homeowners. We ain't owning no home. Okay, so what happens? You get some government, some committee, some smarty art motherfucker from some, whatever. He come in, right? Be some type of policy hawk, and then what happens? Under various threat, regulation, laws, banks are then mandated to loan money to a particular amount of minority applicants. This is why they ask these questions, because government wants to know. So what happens is, when these things happen, these private institutions go out of business.
I got you. So let me help you.
They go out of business.
I got you. So let me help you with my thinking. And this is where I am, Sister L. All discussions for me should really start. I mean, this is good to have the banter back and forth. It's entertaining. I say, but I'm real big on being informative as well. I'm saying, so for me, all discussions start with the data, right? So I would need to see the data to see if it's effective. Are African American people in this country benefiting, right, from the current banking system, right? And we need to identify, if they're not, then we need to do a deep dive analysis and find out why. And then we need to do a deeper dive analysis to apply prescription, right? Based upon best practices, not just throughout this country, but throughout this world. Now hold on, brother.
I'm not gonna cut
That's
you
where
off.
I am. Everything, because I want you to hear me.
I'm hearing
I want you to hear me to understand me, and not hear me to try to, devise and put together an argument, right? Because it's about understanding. So what I'm saying is, for me, all intelligent conversation has to be driven by the data. So like we were talking about our black folks disproportionately being shot down by white police officers. We gotta look at the data. I can pull up some data right now which shows that is the case. And then we need to do a deep dive analysis and find out why. It's not emotional, right?
Why.
Brother, I'm saying you don't know why unless you want to quote data.
I know why.
You have data? What does the data say?
Yes, the
How do
data
you know
says
why?
the reason why more blacks are disproportionately shot because more blacks commit violent crime. But go ahead, keep going.
But that's not always the case. And the other part of that.
So should I be stereotyped by that? So should I just or is it that they fear? Because before you became a police officer, you wouldn't even have a fight in your life.
Say that again. We're talking to them.
I'm sorry. So before you even became a police officer, you never even had a fight in your life. So you get a badge and a gun, and you got so much hatred in your heart for me. That's what it all boils down to. And let's be real here. I mean, let's really be real here. I get what you're saying.
I don't know what's in a person's heart. I don't know.
You can tell. That man set his knee on that man's neck for 10 minutes.
You're talking about Officer Darren. Tafari just asked for data because the reality is no matter how many black people are killed by police officers in this country, the chances of you as a black person being murdered by a police officer is astronomically minuscule. Yeah, but no matter what.
I got you.
And Tafari understands that.
I get that.
So when you but his issue is we're talking about comparing white versus black and so on and so forth.
I wanted to drill down on it, brother, and I'm with you, Chuck, in that regard. But the question is, so the reality is that it happens more often. What you reduce it to is because there's more violent crime committed. That's not necessarily the case. It's their response to the violent crime. That's the issue. Hold on,
so
brother.
It's the police response, not the suspect.
No, I'm not talking about that. It's the police.
No.
Hold on, brother.
Yes, because they are of authority.
It's the police. It's the police response, right, to violent criminals.
Gotcha.
What we have found is that you can have a white person that'll do the same scantless killing, right? We had a situation a few years ago in Tennessee. We had a white woman that ran through that drove through Tennessee, Sister L, and shot 5 people.
Damn.
She got apprehended. We had a father and a son, I think in Boston, a white father and a son team, who drove around the city with 4 bodies in the trunk, shot 2 police officers. They were apprehended. Hold on, brother. I'm saying it. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you, brother Chuck. I'm with you, brother Chuck, in regards to black folks do commit, right, as far as per capita, more violent crimes. I get that. I'm not disputing that.
Okay.
The question is. Okay. Why is it then, though, that when black and white folks commit the same kind of crime, black folks are disproportionately shot and killed, but white folks don't receive that?
My hands up. I ain't got nothing. You still shooting.
And they still getting shot, even if you ain't violent. Ahmaud Arbery wasn't violent. Breonna Taylor wasn't violent.
He was a former cop.
Hey, Breonna Taylor wasn't violent.
I tell you what, man.
That's all I'm saying, brother Chuck.
And because of citizens' arrest, he was able to do that.
These narratives that get casted. I'm gonna use an example. I'm gonna use capitalism as an example because capitalism is liberty. Capitalism is freedom. When we start talking about services and commodities, okay, services and commodities. What? How do you value something? Something that I own is valued based upon what someone else is willing to pay for it. All right, it's demand. All right, when something is in high demand, of course the cost goes up. Right, just to prevent scarcity. We're having these issues about black, white, crime, this, that, and the third, police officers, yada yada yada. If you look at what the market would dictate in terms of property value. Property value goes down when land is not in demand. People can come in and buy it for cheap, and they come in, gentrification, the whole 9 yards. But I'm not even talking about that. What I'm talking about is the private housing market. If you look at land prices, property prices in predominantly white areas, those property values go up. When you're talking about human beings, and once again, to understand capitalism is to understand the principles of natural law. And natural law dictates that self-preservation is the first law of nature. People always talk about the reason why there's so much crime. Well, not so much people, but leftists love to talk about how the reason why there's so much crime is because there's a lack of economic opportunity. I don't believe that. Like Thomas Sowell, I believe it's the inverse. there's so much poverty in predominantly black areas or in our inner cities because there's so much crime. Because private markets, people don't want to invest their own capital in places that are infested with crime. Because when you start talking about a person, you do what you have to do, what you need to do with things that are important to you. You really begin to see what human beings really value and how they really feel about things when it comes to stuff that belongs to them.
Why do you think there's so much crime?
The reason why there's so much crime is because there is no discipline, because the family has been destroyed.
Why?
But the family has been destroyed because of the culture that, you know, became commonplace in America in the mid to late 1960s. And this coincided with the emergence of what became known as the New Left.
Where's your causative data that supports the assertion that crime in the black community is a direct result of the destruction of the black family?
Because it's behavior.
Though.
It's behavior. See,
that's why you do analysis.
Let me
a lot of
explain
things
something.
that we think make sense, when you do the analysis, you see it doesn't.
Let me explain something, L. Because, like I say, once again, it's either one or two things. It's one or two things. It is either the behavior of the individual or is some sort of external factor. It's a polemic. It's binary. Like I say, I know that there could be some gray in the middle, but you have internal factors and you have external factors, and these things, you know, manifest themselves in various ways. Like I said, when I used the example of property value, you know this to be true because those areas that are predominantly white, predominantly Asian. It's funny, we never bring Asians up when we start talking about these things because Asians outperform whites. Asians outperform whites, but some way, somehow, whites control the structure. They control everything. They run everything. But Asians outperform whites in almost every measure, every social variable that matters to most people who care about these things. It's kind of odd. Mm-hmm. But my point is, people do not. So do Africans too. People don't exactly. Africans and blacks in the West Indies. Mm-hmm. It is the native-born black that has the biggest problem because of our internal cultural dynamics. We have destroyed ourselves. But the point that I'm making is, when it comes to back, if I can kind of try to stick this land in, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to know.
Like I said, but you know, in terms of where the danger lies,
where did
because
that start
people.
With us? What happened?
Okay.
What is the fact of, or I can even take your opinion.
Okay.
Where did it start? Where we said, "Fuck it, fuck it. We gonna live in poverty. We gonna live fucked up. We gonna be nasty." We gonna have to. Our areas gonna look horrible.
I can answer.
Go ahead, bro.
Like I said, you know, you talked about the riots earlier, and about the riots in the late 1960s, not the ones that's been going on over the past couple of days. In the 1960s, a lot of people, yes, we had some horrible things take place. You know, a lot of political leaders were assassinated. I don't agree with some of the leaders that were assassinated. You know, both Kennedys, his brother, Malcolm X, Martin, so on and so forth. And it pretty much all culminated with the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And that's when everyone pretty much put, not just Dr. King, but, you know, symbolically put his philosophy of a passive resistance to rest. And then that's when you began to see this rise of so-called black nationalism, which is, I know Tafori gonna run around, jump over his table and choke me, but that's leftism. That's what it is. It just has its various forms of it. It's just various forms of it.
I ain't mad at you.
But to the point, like say for example in Detroit, you know, Tafori knows he older than me. He knows the history of this city and how wealthy this city used to be and how well off a lot of blacks in this city used to be. The unemployment rate in Detroit amongst blacks in the mid 60s was 3.4%. That was lower than the average white nationally.
So much.
That's right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Home ownership in Detroit was the highest amongst blacks than any other major city in the United States.
Even with the institutional.
You know, even with exactly because like Rick said a long time ago.
Homes on land contract.
Exactly, bro.
It was janky.
Right.
We got pimped.
Right.
But we owned the property.
We was doing our thing. Despite that, despite the barriers that were put in place, we were doing our thing. Mm-hmm. You know, and we sort of abandoned that in favor of this idea. And I'm gonna drop another name again because I gotta give credence because I'm not a biter. You know, Jason Riley. talked about in his book, saying the myth of black power. Blacks began to think, and this is the Marxian dynamic of perception based upon group identity. We began to buy into this notion, and this goes all the way back to when, probably around the end of World War II, when the left began to take over our institutions. I know I'm giving a long-winded answer, but you asked, and I think it behooves me to give you the background. Blacks bought this idea that only other blacks could properly understand black people, could properly understand how to solve black problems. We needed more political power, and we needed to move as a collective, because seeing as how we were arbitrarily kept down on the basis of our skin color as a collective, the only way for us to sort of transcend is we needed to move in the opposite direction in the same way, based upon this notion of collectivity, this unity aspect. And that's when things began to fall apart, because unity breeds, repetitiveness, breeds stagnation, conformity, groupthink. Groupthink will breed nothing but stagnation. And that's when things began to fall off the rails, because we began to embrace these ideas that we throw around today, like white privilege, white supremacy, all these ideas. Those things began to become a major part of the black lexicon in the 1960s. But what I'm saying is, it could be fact all you want it to be. But the reality, and this is the problem I have with a lot of the problem I have with a lot of so-called liberals, is because it's not about problem solving. It's about self-aggrandizement, so that you can feel like you're a great person by pointing something out. Ooh, look at that. Yeah, ooh, I'm so angry. Look what that motherfucker just did. Yeah. And then what? What
was your act on it?
You know what I'm saying? But the solution to black problems, white problems, polka dot problems doesn't matter. It's more individualism, more freedom, more of the principles that made Western civilization great, that made Western civilization greater than the Chinese Empire, better than the Habsburg Empire, bigger than the Ottoman Empire. Period. Point blank. And we abandoned those principles in favor of Marxism.
I think
that's what happened.
Just a brief comment on that. I think we have to define what's great, right? So that's a deeper discussion. That's why, like, these kind of forums don't really allow us to flesh things out, because we'd be here for hours. Because what I would do all day is, and brother knows,
good preachers.
You got to define. You got to define.
Come to the mic, Tafari.
You would have to define every term, right? For me, because a lot of times we throw these things around and we don't even understand what we're talking about, right? We make assumptions about what we think a person is saying. So when we talk about Western society being great, well, what if you don't know? I'm saying what makes it great? I'm saying because Western society, right? Is imperialism good? Is there such thing as imperialism?
Yes, there's a such thing. But
is it good? Would you say it's a good thing? Is it?
No, but
I don't think there's good in everything.
Exactly. Let me answer.
No, I agree with you. That's my point exactly.
If it's not good in everything, it's not bad in everything either, because imperialism
good. That's what I was asking.
Wait a second. See,
right.
this is the sort of gotcha moment that sometimes individuals try to, back you up.
I'm not trying to get you. I'm just trying to get understanding. I'm saying, do you think that imperialism is a good thing?
Let me explain. It's not a yes or no answer.
Okay, I got you.
If you
I can appreciate that.
Let me indulge.
I appreciate that.
Let me give me a second. Like I said, a lot of the things that some people, I'm not even assuming that you do this, but some people erroneously attribute certain societal ills exclusively to the United States, when in fact the complete opposite is true, because the things that are bad about the United States are not exclusive, but the things that make us great are exclusive and unique. And that's the difference, because without Western imperialism, a lot of the pathologies that we consider to be immoral that plague the Western world, those things were happening outside of Christendom also. But what imperialism did, if you look at Hong Kong, for example, if you look at, Japan and South Korea and these various places, a lot of these places were former, colonies of Western European nation states. But what ended up happening was they ended up picking up on a lot of the cultural, particulars of their overseers, and eventually they said to them, just as the slaves that were here in the United States, they held up a mirror to the contradiction of the civilization wherein they found themselves. And if you are a just person, then you must give me what you promised to give everyone else. And that's when everything began to change, because it wasn't until Western imperialism that a lot of areas all over the world first began to even learn about a lot of these concepts, like all men are created equal. That existed nowhere else in the world except for Western civilization. So without imperialism, the rest of the world would have never known of those concepts.
That's a concept, but we don't apply it very well.
No, it's not about
Right.
us applying it. It's about them knowing it and understanding it. Look at what Hong Kong is doing today.
Well, no, application is important, because in order for, feel what I'm saying. So,
Once you get,
feel what I'm saying. Feel what I'm saying.
I don't think you understand what I'm saying.
No, I'm saying application. No, I heard what you're saying, and I'm just trying to. I want to make sure I understand it, right? Okay. I'm saying, so Western civilization, or the Western Hemisphere, or the West.
When I say Western civilization, I'm not talking about the Western Hemisphere.
What are you referring to?
I'm talking about Western civilization, the combination of logic and reason. You have Athens, Greece, and you have Jerusalem, and those two societies came together.
I would like to switch gears just a bit.
That's what I mean.
We can take this. This can go for a long time.
I want to talk about what's very unique about the United States, right? We understand what's very unique about North America, right? No other country had institutionalized shadow enslavement like the United States. That's a fact. That's a historical fact.
Yeah, well, they
not like the United States.
We're going to switch gears.
You get that, right? That's a part of why it's so great.
No, that's not a part of why it's so great. The reason why, I'm gonna just put a period on it, because I can't let that. No. Wealth accumulation. Let me finish. Wealth accumulation did not happen as a result of chattel slavery. Let me ask you a question, L. Where did slavery last the longest here in the United States? What region of the United States?
South.
The South. Okay. Now, once slavery ended, why even during the time of slavery, why was the northern regions of the United States more economically prosperous than the South, if that were the case? Yeah, it's a good goddamn question. Yeah. And how do you know this is true is because slavery did not build wealth. What built the wealth of the United States was the market system, capitalism. It's funny when I hear people talk about how, the chattel system, because there were chattel systems all throughout the Western Hemisphere. We didn't even import the largest number of slaves. The United States, the largest number of slaves that came out of West Africa went to Brazil. But why didn't Brazil become the United States? We don't ask ourselves these questions because slavery did not build wealth.
We weren't taught it.
Free markets are what build wealth. You don't build wealth with slavery.
So how do you feel
the South was poorer than the North?
Far as Trump and Biden, especially with the response to the George Floyd.
In the North, by the way, but I ain't got
time. They did, but it ended much sooner.
We'll be here for hours.
It ended much sooner.
It's a combination of that and the textile industry.
It ended much sooner.
Trust me, we can have this debate and we'll be talking about
no. Because of that, though. Slavery was only ended because of that. Quite frankly,
slavery was ended for quite a few reasons.
Yeah.
I think it was more
mainly because of the general strike of over 500,000 enslaved African people.
No,
that's a fact.
That's the
reason why slavery.
Time out.
That's the reason why. Hold on, brother.
Okay, go ahead.
Because what I'm not going to do is allow you to state historical inaccuracies.
No, I didn't even say anything to Fur.
I'm saying
that was me, cuz.
Right, I didn't even say nothing.
Bro. You were saying something. I'm saying
I didn't say nothing though, bro.
That's a fact.
But what I'm saying is
the reason why.
Well, I'm gonna say something you're gonna probably agree with. I'm gonna say something you're gonna probably agree with. Okay, what I'm gonna say is.
Yeah, I'm gonna interrupt and interject.
Okay, this is the problem what I have with a lot of people, and the purpose is to just completely undermine the entire legitimacy of the society by always talking about white society, this, that, and the third. Because you're to refer to your point, you're right. But what also help to facilitate that turning of the tide, because like Stephen Tafuri would admit that slavery was practiced everywhere. As a matter of fact, the slaves were sold into slavery by other Africans. And what also led to the abolition of slavery was the evolution in thinking of Christian white, evangelical Christians, not just in Great Britain, but in the United States as well. Because in the Bible, was there central reference point, because they believe, based upon their interpretation of the Bible, that
It's
slavery
manipulation.
was slave. No, but I'm saying though, you can look at it either way. You can make the case. Well, it depends upon what perspective or what side of the table you sit on. But I just wanted to give credit, man, to the fact that we as a nation, black, whites alike, we all made it here together. And there were so many people from our past, black and whites alike, who sacrificed. He mentioned the uprising, the rebellion, things of that nature.
I agree.
But I'm saying, man, the 700,000s of white Union and Confederate soldiers that died fighting that war, that got to count for something. But all we sit here and do is talk about white, as though all white people,
Victorious Black Revolution.
just all white people just never gave a fuck about black people and never did nothing for nobody.
We know Trump don't, so I want to get to that point.
Oh, first of all, as far as like me, in my politics, I'm not, it's not so much a people thing, for me, as much as it is an ideological thing, because the Republican Party hasn't always, served the interests of conservative voters and Republican voters for a very long time. Trump is the first president, since Reagan that I think has actually tried to implement a conservative agenda. I am for Trump, in terms of his, his economic position of less taxes, less regulations. Is very simple. His pro-choice his pro-school choice stance, his standing up for the First and Second Amendment, his standing up for the entire Constitution for that matter, his perspective on, national sovereignty and national security in terms of, stopping the flow of illegal immigration, his treatment in terms of his foreign policy with our allies and our enemies. I feel as though it is simple. Politics is not really that complicated. You want the freedom to pursue your own interests, which, manifests itself, in the form of economics, but you also want security. You want security and you want prosperity. And no liberal politician can give you that, because liberalism doesn't function that way. Liberalism is about dependency and control. So I could never be in favor of a hardcore left-wing Democrat ever. Not to mention the history involved.
The only issue with Trump that I have more than anything is that he talks so damn stupid.
Like what?
That
Give me an
it's
example.
hard to. I mean, it's easy.
Give me one example.
I don't want to go there. What I'm saying, let me finish my statement first.
Okay.
So that it's hard to even look back and say maybe his policies or maybe what he has to, maybe the underlying may make more sense. But when he comes out and he spews out hatred,
like what?
And he spews out, what you mean? He called the fucking virus the fucking ching chong shit or whatever the fuck he said.
The Wu flu. I call it the Wu flu right now.
It's disrespectful.
Disrespectful to who?
To anyone. You have Asian Americans.
I don't care. They're Asian Americans, but they don't live in China, and I can guarantee.
They grandmama might.
The funniest thing is, and this is the problem that I have. With
he leads
a lot of
with
people.
Disrespect.
No, that's not disrespect.
Okay.
How is it that
So if you call it the monkey flu if it started in Africa, would it be disrespectful?
No, the city is called Wuhan. It started in Wuhan, China. Mm-hmm. President Trump never called it the Wu flu or gave it any sort of colloquialism. He never did that. But the reality is the reality, and I can't play these PC games with individuals, not so much you, but individuals who want to play this game with language and get people off the beaten path by talking about feelings as they relate to that language. The reality is this: we're talking about, it's not offensive to the Chinese people, when in fact the people of China have been living under a totalitarian regime since 1949.
Well, speaking of individualism, ain't our business.
When we do not, it is our business, because what China is doing is making it our business, because they are seeking to overthrow us for global hegemony. Before anyone can say anything about China, learn, know, and understand the history of the Chinese regime. The people of China are the ones who
have the most human rights violations of any
exactly
in the
country exactly. And the people who are victimized by the Chinese government are Chinese people. So when we ignore, when we act like we can't criticize the Chinese government, we're doing no service to anyone except trying to project our virtue. Oh, I'm not a bigot, I'm not a racist, I wouldn't dare say anything like that. No, call it for what it is, because China needs to be broken. All we have to do, just from the Great Leap Forward to the Cultural Revolution to the massacre at Tiananmen Square to what they're doing today with their Uyghurs, their concentration camps, their organ harvesting, their political prisoners of the Falun Gong tradition, on and on and on. China is the Third Reich of the 21st century.
Okay.
And we, as a society, the way we are destroying each other, black versus white, this versus that, we do not have what it takes as a culture and as a society to defeat Xi Jinping, which is the modern day the real Adolf Hitler, not Donald Trump. We do not have what it takes if we are going to keep on picking, poking, and prodding and destroying our society like this. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So I'm sending a warning shot to everybody. If you think, and I said this last time, that this country is so bad and so awful, you are going to regret everything you ever said about Trump or anybody for that matter when somebody like Xi Jinping get a hold of your ass, because that's a real dictator. It ain't about the shit that he said, or he said a joke that hurt my feelings. No, he gonna hurt you. He gonna hurt you. Just ask the Africans that live in there right now who were thrown out of their homes on the street. Ask them. Ask the peoples of Africa about the Belt and Road Initiative and how China is, talk about imperialism, by the way. The United States was never an imperial nation. China is an imperial nation because they snatching up land all over the Southeast China Sea. I mean, I don't even want to call it the Southeast China Sea because it don't belong to them. It's international waters. But they are building military bases in the South China Sea and claiming that to be their own. And they're snatching up land all across Africa. China is a threat to the entire world. And I'm not about to sit up here
I don't disagree with you.
And say that we can't ban fuck them.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I just feel as though Trump is not, I just feel like he's not a good look.
Well, it's a couple different things.
I don't understand what that means.
I'm not even gonna get into how absurd and ridiculous the stuff that he says is, right?
Speaking of radical, he has radical behaviors.
My thing, I wouldn't even
irrational behaviors.
Give me an example.
He spews.
You're gonna lose every time. Just come on. Give me some examples.
There's a couple examples the sister can give you, but I'm gonna let you speak for yourself. Then go ahead, sister.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I'm listening to you. Go ahead.
Nope.
Okay, so some irrational behaviors. He literally said, and listen to me, Brother Chuck. He literally said, if states weren't appreciative, he would not give them funding and resources during the COVID-19.
He said,
brother, that's what he said. Hold on, brother. Let me finish, please. Go ahead. Right? Go ahead. During the COVID-19 pandemic. Right? Hold on. What he said was he wouldn't accept their calls. But you know who did accept their calls? Who saved the day? Per the governors, Pence. Even Trump himself said it was Pence. What I'm saying,
we wouldn't have got no funding if it wasn't for Pence.
Hold on. That's a fact. That's just a fact. He said it. It came out his own mouth.
Let me know when you're ready for me to reply.
He said it.
You ready?
What I'm saying, there is no reply because it's a fact. We can argue over opinion. You can't argue over fact, Doc.
That's not what he said.
Do you understand?
You're miscontextualizing what he said.
Oh,
can I
man.
speak? I'm still waiting for you. I'm gonna let you.
Go ahead, brother. I want to hear your rebuttal. Go ahead. I'm listening. I'm listening to your rebuttal.
For this man who doesn't know what planet he is.
Okay, here's something even more ridiculous. What about when he said Frederick Douglass was still living? When he referenced Frederick, you didn't know about that, did you? Oh. When he went to the African American Museum, when he first became president, when he went, hold on, brother. The sister said he says outlandish things. The fool, when he went to the African American Museum, he spoke of Frederick Douglass as if he was still living. You remember that, right? There are 18,000 documented lies that have come out of his mouth.
18,000
documented lies that has come out of his mouth.
How do you document 18? No, hold on, time out. Now,
right,
time out. What kind of?
I can read for you. I can read for you.
What kind of preposterous shit is that?
I wouldn't say my biting either.
Hey, hold on. Exactly.
Hold on, bro. So
he's the fool. He's the fool that's done it. Right. So ask him why in the world would you tell 18,000 lies, you big dummy?
Asking. So let me say. Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry.
Before you